Hello. So this was an interesting article to me, this case study about Chris Kettering and his classroom and his school district. One of the things that troubled me the most about it was kind of the rap it gave on small towns. And I think it's important we talk about that because, we're kind of not in a small town, but in an area where there's a lot of small towns neighboring. I mean, your smaller schools, your smaller communities, farming communities, rural communities, all those types of schools. I think it's important we address that first because in this article, it gives a bad rap to these small towns, secluded areas that everybody that comes out of there is kind of a racist, a bigot, or insensitive to different types of minorities or communities, and that's just simply not the truth. I come from Castle. It is a smaller community. I mean, I only graduated with 130 kids. It's kind of big for our area, but it's just not that big in comparison to Joplin and other schools around here. But it's just not true. I mean, you're going to have people that are bad. You're going to have people that are racist, bigots, insensitive to different types of communities, minorities in small towns and in big towns. I mean, there's bad people here just like there's bad people where I come from. I mean, it's not like this just small town, all people are bad, because that's just simply not true. And it kind of gives that narrative. So I think it's important we address that because it's important for me to kind of stick up for that because I see it a lot nowadays, and it's just simply not true. Some of the most sensitive and caring people I know come from these communities that I come from. As far as the document itself, it's also a troubling document in the fact of how it ends. I mean, it's not the storybook ending. Chris Kettering puts a lot of effort and determination and drive, and I think that's important for future educators into this cause for the walk of AIDS. So he has no kids that support him at first, just because simply they don't know, which is really not their fault. It's just into how they were raised and how they were brought up in the school system, and even he said failed health teachers that haven't done their job. So it's not really their fault necessarily, but there's no kids that are involved. But Chris feels passionate about it because he's had experience with it. He's written about it, I think, but he's been around people that have written about it and because he wrote for a newspaper, so he knows what it's like. He's heard the stories, the sad stories of losing people, the pain, the agony, not just for the person but for the families as well. And so he has a heart for it, and he thinks if we can teach these kids kind of what it is and what it's for, just because simply they're saying they're not voting for it because they just don't really know the background or all these stories that he's heard. They just don't have the same knowledge. So he goes to the principal, and man, the principal just somebody that is narrow-minded to me. He wants to keep things. He's one of these administrators, and I've seen a lot of them nowadays that they don't want to ruffle feathers of anybody that's above them or in their community members or anybody like that, as far as superintendents, assistant superintendents, school board members, fellow principals. They just don't want to ruffle feathers, so they don't want to do anything that would jeopardize, their chance or maybe their position or standing within the community, which, as administrators, I think it's important that they step out, and kind of make a stand for things because they have that voice and that platform. Now, there are things you have to be careful on, but this walk, it's not like it's the separation of church or state, I'm a Christian, but it's not even like it's for that. It's not like it's for a walk for in support of gay community. It's just not. It's just a moral walk over something that I compare it to polio or the plague, anything like that. It's just a morally right cause for that reason. And Chris Kettering, and then he goes to the teacher. And I think of my family's been in teaching for generations before me, and some of the best relationships that I see from my family over the years that they still maintain is with fellow teachers. So then he goes and talks to the guy that he kind of first became friends with, and man, he actually is trying to help him out, and I think he is just because he knows what the community is, and he hasn't stood up and said anything. But he doesn't really support him either, and I think the camaraderie between teachers is important, and it just isn't there in this circumstance. And I know he's new and not a lot of people know him, but still. And then he goes to present it to the students, and his biggest problem is that he wasn't prepared. He brings up the idea, and he kind of gets the ball rolling, and things are moving, and we're starting to heat up, and kids are jumping on because he's explaining and reading these stories to gain them emotionally, because this is what true stories are, what people are going through. And then Ron says something that kind of sidetracks the conversation. And this is where his ill-preparedness takes the conversation away from where he had it going. And he's not prepared on how to answer. So Ron builds up it even more, and then everybody kind of shuts down when they hear that. And who knows, Ron's parents might be somebody they might be the bank president, or they might be, own some business that's important. So everybody just shuts down, or even if he's just normal, because they hear all the negative things that he's saying, and then they're just kids. They're not narrow-minded. they hear one thing and they just kind of shut down emotionally. Whether that's right or wrong, the frontal lobe isn't developed, so it's just a natural thing. But Ron wasn't prepared to kind of deep dive into that when he really should have been, compared to their first meeting when nobody was in support. And I know that he thought they just didn't know, but he still should have been prepared for, I don't know, an ill-cited comment, kind of like the one Ron said, and he's just not. And I think that's one of the things, as a future teacher that I could take into the classroom is being prepared. And not just being prepared, but following Chris's footsteps in the fact of being determined and making a cause, or going for a cause. It's a just cause, and although he didn't have people on his side, the heart and determination to do the right thing is the reason you become a teacher. And I think that taking from Chris's spirit is important. Yes, he wasn't prepared in the end, but his heart was in the right place. I mean, he wanted to fight for a just cause and a moral cause because he felt like it was the right thing to do, and he wanted to kind of enlighten kids on, man, there's people out there in the world that are hurting, that are dying, and not just them being in pain and agony, but their family when they die and have to deal with the grieving process. And his heart and determination to make that cause come to light is something we could take away as well. So that, and being prepared when you're addressing things like this, or being prepared in any facet of teaching, preparation is the key to anything. I mean, sports, teaching, business, anything, being prepared. And if Chris would have been prepared, I think he would have been able to take the conversation and put it right back on track where he had it after Ron's comment. So the big idea is that's something you can put in the classroom, but the big idea is that as well. Be prepared and have the heart and determination to do the right thing, even when people don't always support you. And that's something in our world today that is getting better. People are standing up for a cause and going for something. And I'm not saying I agree with everything that's going on or all the causes. I'm just saying that when you feel a certain way about something, it's a moral cause, go after it and be prepared when you do it. And that's all I had on it. Thanks.